Greetings, my friend. Welcome to the secret shop.
Hello everybody, my name is Ian and we are back with the Secret Shop, another episode. Today I am joined by one of my regular co-hosts. Anger, how are you doing? You've had a busy couple of weeks, as I understand.
Yeah, hello, I'm doing fantastic. Valve gave me closed beta access and a card reveal, so my life is pretty much just amazing right now. Not to brag, no, but like for real, like it's just like all the lore and everything and just playing the game and not spending like 1.5 hour on one single game, you know. Like
you're rubbing it in so much. Neon still isn't in it.
Yeah, I'm used to it at this point. I'm a little bit numb to all of this, rubbing in. And so for those who don't recognize that other voice on the line, it is another person in the closed beta. We have Swim as a special guest. Introduce yourself for the friends at home who don't really know who you are.
Oh, hello. I'm Swim. I am a small-time streamer for Gwent, the Witcher card game.
that nobody has ever heard of.
There's like 5 people in the audience who've like really have heard of Gwent, and everyone else is like, what's a Gwent? I've never heard of a Gwent. So, you though have been making content for a while on Gwent, correct?
Oh yeah, a good almost 2 years actually, for some reason.
Very nice. But you are in the beta as well. You've been doing a number of YouTube videos, rating all of the cards. I just was going through some of those today, talking about your experiences from that. So, how long have you been in the beta?
7 months or so at this point. Yeah, I've been playing it quite a bit.
Yeah, so I am the lone person here who is on the outside looking in, and I won't try and rub that in too much, but I've kind of grown accustomed to the fact that you're being surrounded by all these people who know all about the sweet cards and technology that are going on in the game. But I usually like to start the episodes with a little bit of a warm-up question. The one that was actually proposed by one of the members of the audience, GG Monster, asked what would be a lore topic that you would want to see them explore more in some of the expansions. So I'm actually going to start with Swim because I don't know if you know anything about the lore at all.
I basically don't. There's something there's something about a Mad Moon, like in Majora's Mask or something like that. I have literally no idea. I watched this Dota lore video once and I don't remember any of it.
Very nice. Very nice. Now, I know that you, Anger, though, have a little bit more passion and knowledge in the subject. What would be a subject that you would want them to look into in some of the future expansions?
Well, the thing is, now that we know that Artifact takes place before Dota 2, I'm really interested to see if we will see the Abyssal Horde attack on Stonehall, because I for a long time was like, I shut down everyone who had that theory, but now it's actually pretty probable. And then, but also just the demons, because some of the cards in Artifact are hinting to like there being a big maybe demon faction later. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Well, I'm actually looking right now at the cards that have been revealed, and the relative density of like demon-related cards is actually kind of low compared to how much of it is in Dota. So, for instance, there's no Shadow Fiend, there's no like Doom isn't there. Like, there's a lot of
not yet.
Not yet. Yeah. I mean, these are all possible like reveals that could happen down the line still. But given what we know from the copyright lists and stuff like that, it doesn't look like those are going to be part of the game right now.
Mm-hmm.
No comment.
No comment. I think we'll get a few no comments over the course of this, which is fine. I wouldn't want to get you guys in trouble with Valve. But with that, actually, my answer to this question is I want to learn just more and more about this creep feud thing, which transitions really well into some of the new cards that we've gotten, and we're going to spend most of our time, of course, talking about these new cards. And the two, like one that I want to start off with, actually, is going to be Kaina, who is one of the new heroes. We've seen the stats in her card for a while now, but we didn't have all of the details, so we haven't had a chance to talk about her. But she is a blue hero, a 2/12, and her passive ability is that random melee creeps are always deployed in Kaina's lane. And her premier card is Prey on the Weak, which is a 4-cost blue card that summons a Hound of War for every damaged unit. And so Hound of Wars are just little 2/1 little doggos. So this was a card that is like from what I've heard from the beta testers, this is one of the best heroes in the game. Is that like, am I understanding things correctly? That's what you guys think so far?
So that's a good question, Jan. I think that this has kind of been the case in the past. She's actually had a pretty good performance many moons ago when, more people were kind of trying her out. That being said, a lot of people have been playing mostly draft format since then. And I think that kind of in that time, players have gotten a lot better. And a lot of them are starting to rank Kaina just a little bit lower. I personally would put her around 4th or 5th best blue hero.
Have you had a chance to play with her yet, Anger? Because I know that you just got into the bidders. You're still probably like reading all the cards and thinking of the different.
Yeah, I have played her a little bit and a little bit against her too with Swim, and I think she's really strong, but I feel like it's mostly because of the stats. So when you're and this is Swim who told me though that when you're playing blue, they're also weak, but she has pretty high stats, so she won't just straight up die the first round.
Yeah, that's something that I've definitely picked up as a bit of a theme for the blue heroes, is because if I had just seen her and not had any information about what she was and how she was doing in the beta, I kind of would have thought that she was a little bit weak, because her ability doesn't seem to really do anything exactly. I mean, I guess it allows you to do a little bit of planning around how things will work, but it's not exactly an exciting ability, I think. And then her signature cards too requires some setup. Maybe that's not what your deck is really about. How do you get maximum value out of this? But from everything that I've heard about, it just seems that the main defining feature of what makes her good is that 12 health, which means that you're going to be landing your spells consistently, and there's enough strength in the other blue cards that that's all that you need.
Yeah, I think I can actually break down Kaina pretty well for you guys. So, like, 2 things. First of all, I would say her passive is, if anything, a detriment. I think this is actually basically a neutral effect, but if I had to pick, I would actually say this is a negative thing. You often don't want your creeps going onto one row over and over again. Sorry, one lane, Gwent player and me coming out. But basically, obviously, there are going to be situations where this is a good thing for you, but I find that it is slightly outweighed by the negatives, right? And you can kind of see that being balanced by her very high health value, right? Which, in that case, makes, like you said, her passive pretty underwhelming. The other thing about her is, I think Kaina in a nutshell is that she's good against non-control matchups. For example, when you're playing a blue deck and your opponent is not, for 2 reasons. Because her creeps going onto the same lane with her passive over and over again is mostly okay unless the opponent is playing broad AoE tools like, for example, Conflagration, that can kind of punish you for having that effect that you can't disable. And the second reason is because of her card, the Doggos of War, is actually a pretty good card if the opponent doesn't have that AoE answer. But again, if they do, it's very punishable. So I like her when you're not playing against a blue deck.
That makes sense. That makes sense. But so with that, we can actually then point to her flip side, which is also another blue card. This is Prell X, another blue hero. She is a 3/5 uncommon. She has the ability Bringer of the Faithful, and she gets an extra melee creep into her lane every deployment phase. And the premier card is Barracks, which is a 5-cost, of course, blue improvement that adds an additional melee creep to the lane every turn. Now, my initial reaction in seeing this, having not played with it, is it felt like this would be good in or at least serviceable in a tokens style deck. If you're playing this in blue-green, you're pairing this with Mists of Avernus and After Defiance and other cards like this to maybe we're going to get to Enchantress soon, which is another card that would make sense as a pairing with something like this. And in that kind of style of deck, which seems like it's something that is possible to do with blue, she would be good. But outside of that, like in a controlling deck, probably is pretty unplayable.
Yeah.
I would say Prell X in a nutshell is a card that I would be inclined to call kind of bad, but mostly on a constructed level. Honestly, Artifact, I have to say, like, to start, Artifact is such a game that is disparate between its constructed and draft mode, much more so than any other card game. Because every other card game, pretty much except for maybe sort of Magic the Gathering, puts their constructed mode ahead of their draft mode, like by a wide margin, right? Their draft mode is extremely secondary. Artifact is a very good balance between them. In fact, if anything, it might put its draft mode ahead of its constructed mode. And I would say Prell X in a nutshell is a bad card in constructed, but a pretty solid card in draft where things are slower and your kind of attrition-based effects are able to get a lot more value over time.
I don't know. I feel like her improvement just cost too much mana. And like it's good to have an extra melee creep into the lane, but I don't really know if it's worth it for the cost.
Yeah, that was something that I know that someone was mentioning in his video of saying that you compare this to something like Dimensional Portal and the relative value of the two of them. Like this takes until like if you deploy this on your 5-mana turn, it takes you to your what it is like your 8-mana turn, I guess, to get the same value as a single dimensional portal. So you have to hit it to your 9-mana turn before you've actually exceeded that. So I mean, it definitely, if you're going all in on that theme, and maybe that isn't possible right now given the current status of the card pool, there's something to go there, there's something to do there, but it's just really, really slow, and the AoE punishes that are available are going to be pretty severe.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much true. A lot of these kind of slower cards are very acceptable in draft, and I actually think like when I first got into Artifact, I was thinking to myself, a lot of the cards seem to be on a very disparate power level. Prell X to me seems like a really bad card, but the more I play the game, the more I realize that almost always the cards that are bad and constructed are good in draft, and Prell X really fits that bill.
And I think that it should be worth even spelling out a little bit of why that is the case for people who haven't played very much in your draft limited style environments. Basically, those styles of gameplay tend to reward raw stats and efficiency, and partly because you tend not to have access to big board wiping kind of effects. One card that we haven't actually talked about on the cast yet because of just the way that the card has been revealed is Annihilation, which is it was shown to us initially within the first releases back in March, and we knew that this was going to be a super powerful card there because this, of course, is a board wipe. But like this is going to be, we don't have a confirmed rarity on this yet. I expect this is going to be a rare card, and it's going to be really important in constructed games because people, it's a powerful effect. You want to have access to it. It's a great way to punish a variety of types of strategies, but you're not going to see this in draft with any regularity. And that change of card availability is going to make a really big difference of what you can and can't do.
Yeah, I think that's very much true. Like the draft format really favors slower cards just because you expect like just less competitive cards and the game doesn't end as quickly. So games in draft on average will last something like 3 turns longer. So you look at Prell X, his passive and his card both do very well in these kind of longer games, and draft really caters to that.
Okay, so we have some more heroes to talk about that have been released. Let's switch up to a green hero, one that was released shortly after the last cast, and that's a Baton. This is a 4/9 with the green hero, as I mentioned, the ability Borrowed Time, fully heal a Baton and give it damage immunity this round, and it has the premier card Aphotic Shield. Is that how it's pronounced? Angry, you would know.
Aphotic. I can't remember from Dota.
It's aphotic shield, guys.
Yeah, it's actually a real word. I've never heard this one before.
I don't know.
I'll look this up later. But anyway, Aphotic Shield is 2 cost. It purges enemy effects from a unit, and then you give the unit 2 armor and 2 retaliate this round. It's worth noting that purge effect can be used in your opponent's stuff as well, and they still get these bonuses, but if you're purging off something like a serious buff that they've got, then this could be worthwhile to use. So this is a card that when it was first revealed, it was Stan Sifka who revealed it. It seems like a card that is designed around kind of just not dying.
Yes.
But it's really hard to advance the game exactly with something like this. I personally am not excited about this, and it sounds like you guys haven't been excited about it in the beta either.
I have a very low amount of excitement for Abaddon.
Yeah.
So, okay. Abaddon as a card, like you said, he's good at staying alive. Maybe he's good for like a green splash, because when you have like a single hero, the problem is if it dies, you're locked out of that color. So maybe like a singleton green splash he can find his way into, but his card is very versatile, but maybe not really good enough. And he just ends up being kind of a little mediocre in both constructed and draft.
Aphotic, by the way, it means lightless or dark. So it's like a dark shield, I guess. Just for those who are curious at home. Have you had a chance to play with this at all yet, Inger?
I think I played against it once, and or maybe twice, because I remember once I used Time of Triumph, and someone used this, and I was like, "Oh shit!" But then I realized it's only one hero, so it doesn't really matter. If you taught 3 heroes, then it doesn't really do that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something too that I've been learning from this, and like you were mentioning this in one of your videos, your red video, their swim, is that Time of Triumph seems like it's a pretty meta-defining card in many ways, because it just so buffs up all of your stuff that you can take down towers so quickly.
It's a pretty good card.
It's decent.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, we have Bloodseeker. I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts are on this one, because I haven't heard very much one way or another. My personal take, so he's a 7/6 black hero, has the ability Bloodbath, a reactive ability, fully heal Bloodseeker after a unit blocking it dies. And it has the premier card, Blood Rage, which gives a unit, it silences a unit and then gives it +4 attack this round. This actually seems okay to me. We haven't seen all of the black heroes, I don't think, so it's hard to know exactly where it stacks up in the whole hierarchy of things. But a 7/6 with an ability like this, allowing it to stay in lane for a long time, could be pretty useful. But at the same time, he isn't as good as assassination as some of the other heroes that we've seen, like Sniper or Phantom Assassin, etc. So I'm not sure exactly where he measures up. I'll start with Anger this time. Do you have any impressions on this card yet?
I think his signature card is not very good, because like +4 attack, if that's what you want, Poised to Strike or whatever it's called, is much better. It's 1 mana and gives +4 attack. But in the silence, even someone crap like Rix does better with. I believe his silence is also 5 mana.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's doing both of those things, but worse than the other two. And I don't know. I feel he's a bit underwhelming. He doesn't really strike me as very good.
Yeah, that's pretty much the camp I'm in. I've played around with Bloodseeker quite a bit, and he's just kind of a mediocre hero. He's sort of like Abaddon, where, maybe... So, Prell X was kind of like 1 star in Constructed and maybe like 4 stars in Draft or something like that. Whereas Abaddon and Bloodseeker are maybe just kind of like 2 in both. Like, they're never really terrible. They're sort of decent, but at the same time, there's not too much of a reason to run it. I would say his card is probably better than Rix's card, because even though sometimes you are buffing the opponent's unit, you do have the versatility of being able to use it for power on yours.
Mhm.
But a single target silence at 5 mana is just not necessarily going to be game swinging.
Yeah, I think the application that I was thinking about this that could be interesting is piling up a bunch of, especially the Stonehall Cloak as something to buff itself, what makes it just impossible to kill in some situations. But that sort of requires a few things to go right already before you get to that state. So I can really see that. But yeah, definitely the premier card is not at its best and has some problems there. Enchantress can be the next one that we talk about. This is a 4/8 green hero, has the ability +2 regeneration, and Enchantress's allied neighbors have +2 regeneration, and then the premier card is Verdant Refuge, which gives your units in lane, your allies, and have +1 armor, and this is a 5-cost improvement. So it's her passive ability is basically like the spell that Omni Knight has, correct?
Effectively, yes. It's 2 regen. It only affects herself and the adjacent allies, whereas Omni's is board wide, but yes.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty close. So that's okay. Her premier card seems really slow.
It is. It's very slow. I would say, I mean, Enchantress is actually one of the better green heroes. She probably doesn't fit the bill for constructed, but she's maybe a decent budget choice if you happen to have her. For draft, however, she's definitely something you're going to be picking up in a lot of games. Like her card is slow, but her body is very good. Like this is a premier passive with premier stats. If your opponent is able to kill her very quickly, maybe something like a PA spawns into her and just kills her right away, then her regen won't be getting much value. But outside of that rare case, it's very hard to kill her.
I guess something like blue decks, I imagine that it can definitely be good in that way. But I guess also then the green just has systematic problems against blue decks because of the annihilation problem.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, you can compare Enchantress to, for example, something like, let me just double check to see if this card has been revealed. Okay, yeah, something like a Treant Protector, which we haven't seen a signature card, but we know that his passive allows his allied neighbors to have +2 armor. Enchantress is basically a better version of this, because not only does she have effectively the same thing, regen is extremely comparable to armor, but she heals herself every turn as well.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting and good comparison. And we don't know all the details of Treant Protector, but we do know that the signature card is a unit. And I feel like almost any unit that has remotely reasonable stats, you would kind of prefer to have access to that than the Verdant Refuge, which is just, I don't know. I feel like that first point of armor in a lot of situations isn't going to change the lane dramatically. I guess I would rather have the units out first and prioritize those in my decks, and having to fit 3 of these in my deck as well is just not what I want. It feels like a card that would have diminishing returns.
I think that's absolutely true. This is probably a worse version than Treant, effectively in both draft and constructed, but it's still a card you're pretty happy to see in draft if you're curving green.
Any thoughts on this one, Anger?
I think the signature card is trash. But otherwise, I like her stats and ability. But yeah, no, I don't really think much about her.
Yeah, her sig isn't very good. I mean, it does really, really well in like just the creep combat format of draft. And it fulfills kind of the 5 mana slot, which is honestly something that is a little light in Artifact so far. A lot of you guys who have been kind of like building test decks already will have kind of seen that. A lot of the good cards are at the 4 mana. There's some 6s. 5 is a little bit light, and don't get me wrong, it's not a great card, but it ends up being okay, maybe a little better than it looks.
Yeah, that's actually something that I have been noticing recently, is that there's a big hole at 5 in a lot of these decks. I'm not sure if there's something that comes up later that will really fill that and make it really exciting. But something like this card, it feels like it's powered at a 4 cost. So like if it was a 3 cost, I think that I would actually be pretty excited about it, because you're able to get that in on the first turn, really switch some creep combat in that first round, and that would be really exciting. At 4, it'd be kind of like, okay, I guess that this can definitely do something, especially if the opponent works the way that I want it to. And then finally, in like when you're up to the 5 mana turn, though, it just feels like it's a little bit too low impact. Venomancer is up next. This is a really interesting card from my take. I'm not sure. I feel like it's probably not good enough, but we'll talk through it and see if I'm wrong. So he is a 2/6 blue hero, and he has the passive ability Venomous Nature, and it's a reactive ability that summons a Plague Ward into Venomancer's lane each deployment phase. The Plague Wars, we'll still have to read it right now before we get to the signature card, because it's obviously related. It is a 3 cost Plague Ward, before the action phase, deal 2 piercing damage to a random enemy neighbor of Plague Ward, and it's a 1/3. So spawning these 1/3s every turn is what his passive does, and then his signature card, his premier card, is Sow Venom, and this also summons 2 Plague Wards. So all that he does is summon Plague Wards. One of the things about this that I actually am a little bit disappointed about is that I was hoping that there would be a poison mechanic in the game. At least, I mean, there could be one in the future, but it looks like that's not going to be the case, at least for now, because it would have been on Venomancer if we were going to see something like that. But that's unfortunate for me personally. But this seems like it could be okay in something like a tokens deck, but it's just pretty slow, especially the fact that these Plague Wards don't actually do very much damage to towers, because they like this the ability that they have return of dealing the 2 piercing damage that doesn't hit towers at all. So I feel like there's a lot of games where if you're playing Venomancer, your opponent must be like, okay, I'm just going to abandon that lane, whatever. It'll take you forever to actually beat down the tower there. I'm going to just focus on the other 2 lanes, and because you just have all these chunk blockers, or if you have something that's able to get around this, like a sweeper or something like that, then it just doesn't even matter anyway.
Yeah, I guess the most direct comparison to Venomancer is Prell X, of course, because they both have this passive that they need to stay alive to summon this unit every single turn, and if they don't, then they're very punished by their really, really weak stat lines. Basically, the idea is, I would say this is a little stronger than Prell X, probably in Constructed, on the level of it in Draft. The biggest question is, how do you compare Plague Ward to melee creep? Because sometimes Plague Wards will feel a good amount better, but if you're just pushing an empty lane, they do definitely feel worse. They do have 1 less attack and 1 less health, despite that pretty powerful passive when it's able to find a target. I would say Venomancer is definitely kind of more defensive in that way. It's able to disrupt the opponent's board better. And it's actually one of the better blue heroes in my mind in something like Constructed. You have a lot of ways to be able to keep this alive, and its card gives you a lot of what blue needs, which is kind of like fighting for the early game, right? So cards like Cunning Plan will keep this alive. And I think that while its card Sow Venom isn't necessarily amazing, blue is extremely top heavy. You've got a lot of cards like, for example, Luna's Eclipse, which do very well at 6 mana. You've got like, Earthshaker has Echo Slam, and Skywrath Mage has Mystic Flare. Like, these are all really expensive cards. Veno gives you a little bit more what you need, which is like the 4 mana early game kind of stall and control.
I actually really like Venomancer, and after playing him a little bit, his Plague Wards actually are kind of like, they have the same effect as Conflagration, where if you're really lucky, they will take out maybe a hero before the other player is able to do anything in that lane, because it's before the action phase. So I actually really like Venomancer.
One thing that we were actually talking about in the Discord that's been a little bit surprising, and maybe people who have been following the podcast might be interested to hear this. What was the color combination that you've been the most interested in the beta there, Anger?
Yeah, Anger, what is it?
Well, maybe...
Tell the truth.
Red is good. It's still good. I'm not saying red is bad. I'm just saying that,
Guys, she's played like 2 games of red.
Okay, maybe the other colors are a little bit good too. Maybe a little better.
I'm gonna find the exact quote here, just for people at home. So I might become a UG cuck. It's the way that she described herself. And now that she's actually in the beta, she's been turned. She's decided that drawing cards is cool. No longer about that axe and bristleback and Legion Commander life. Has given in to the value and the blue overlords.
Yeah, sorry.
And how does it feel?
It feels actually pretty liberating, to be honest. No, but like, okay, so UG is good, but I made a pretty solid mono black deck actually.
Okay.
Anger, I swear to God, right after we finish this podcast, literally challenge me with that black deck.
I'm gonna destroy you.
I cannot wait any longer. I've heard you say that deck is good too much at this point.
I love it. Go for it. I want to hear that. But that sounds like then you've been playing green and blue and black. I'm noticing a color that's missing there. So interesting to hear that. But yeah, definitely that's been something that's, I mean, I've been noticing too, is going through these card reveals, is there hasn't been a whole lot of main deck cards for red that are particularly interesting. Most of them are pretty like, you know, like you're like, okay, that's good-ish, but maybe it's situational, or it's good, but another color kind of does that better. Like one card that we have seen that was revealed by Kriparian that actually does look pretty reasonable to me is Spring the Trap. 7 cost, cross lane red spell that summons 2 Centaur Hunters, which are 4/8s.
Yeah.
And this looks really good to me, but like there are a lot of other holes in the curve for red where the card quality does not really translate.
Yeah, Spring the Trap is a pretty solid card. I think it's going to be something like a 2 of in a lot of red decks. Probably a little too top heavy to run as a 3 of, especially since Time of Triumph is kind of your real win condition there.
Yeah.
But it's a really great stall card and gives you time to time.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Neon, didn't we forget Bounty Hunter?
We didn't. We haven't seen his signature card yet.
Yeah,
Are you
Anger,
sure?
they haven't seen it.
Come
yet.
on.
Oh,
Yeah,
you've only seen half of it. Oh, yeah.
Neon would know. He's he's using all the information he can.
Yeah, I'm the one who's like, I would love to know what it is. You want to tell me? I feel free to cut this out of the podcast, but you know, I would love to be able to chat about that, but that I think will have to be in the future for now. Not Hunter though, like just we did talk about this on the spoiler cast that we did, like the emergency one with Simon, and then Action Jackson stopped by for a little bit, which is really great. People who missed that one, it was launched in the middle of the week, so check that one out. It'll be the last one in the feed. But if you the Bounty Hunter 7/7 with the ability that it gets 4 attack every 50% chance of getting a +4 attack, that's a card that I am very interested to see what his signature card is, because that base seems so good. That's a lot of stats. That's a lot of potential aggression. So that's one that I definitely have my eyes on.
Yeah, Shuriken's OP actually.
Nice. So, but yeah, Spring the Trap does seem pretty reasonable. I imagine this is absolutely amazing in draft. Getting those 4/8 Centaurs, that's got to be just totally turn around one of the lanes if you ever happen to get your hands on this in the draft environment.
Yeah, I would definitely say so with Spring the Trap.
Cool. Okay, so there are a bunch of other cards that we have that are that have been spoiled that we don't that like we haven't talked about yet. A pretty wide variety. So let's go through some of the different ones that have been released that are interesting. One that was actually released just earlier today, I believe, was the Tyler Estate. This is an improvement that gives both towers -2 armor in the lane. I have been really surprised by the volume of anti-power effects that there are in the game. It really feels as if there could be a deck that tries to lock your opponent out of playing stuff. I don't know if this is something that's in the theme of what Anger is working on with this mono black deck, but this seems totally obnoxious under certain circumstances. I don't necessarily think the card is good in the average case, but the ceiling on this card is really high.
I'll let you go first, Anger.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't played this card simply because I don't really see a situation where it's good, except like if you have a lot of low mana cost stuff, or if you have completely abandoned a lane, but like still like there's nothing this does that you can't do better with other things. I don't know. It's just a waste of space in the deck and a waste of mana, a waste of everything.
Really? That's interesting. So we're on the Tyler estate, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Tyler, just making sure. I think that's probably true in general. There is actually a couple potential combos you could see emerging with this with a little more support. It does really well with something like the Oath. I would say overall this is a card that might not be able to find its place into a deck right now, but it's fairly unique. The idea with the Oath is basically you can't play spells or creeps in that lane anyway, so reducing your mana is okay. And sometimes being able to win a game before the opponent has enough mana to stop you can be a win condition. I would agree with you right now, but this is a card that could, in theory, get scary with a little more synergy and combo potential.
Yeah, it definitely seems as if you really need a critical mass of denial effects, because I think that one of the problems with these types of strategies in these kinds of deck is that if anything kind of gets through the defenses, then like if you're like, for instance, you play this, you're trying to play this on a given lane and your opponent has the initiative first and they play out a creep like a savage wolf or something like this, then you're just so far behind and you can never really regain that. So I think that there's a lot of things that have to go right, and you really need a critical mass of this that you can just totally shut down your opponent of doing anything at all. And maybe there's a higher number of it between this and then lock cards as well. But just none of these really affect the board as much and makes me a little bit suspicious. But I think that actually does offer an interesting transition into a card that you guys mentioned, which is the Oath, which is a 3-cost improvement. I'm actually really interested to hear your thoughts on this. It says you cannot play spells or creeps while this is the active lane. If there is an allied black hero in this lane, allies have +4 attack. Now, this does mean that you can play improvements and items still in the lane, which is useful. But this is a very all-in aggro kind of card that I think combos well with the Tyler estate, if that was actually a deck possibility. Is this style of aggro deck something that's possible, you think?
Perhaps. I'm not, the Tyler estate, much less so. That's kind of more so an attachment. The Oath is a pretty powerful card. I think a lot of people are underrating this one. The way I see this card being more useful is, sure, there's going to be some times where you want to play it early, but I would actually say this is more so a finisher, sort of like Bloodlust from Hearthstone, where it's something you just play at the end to reach for lethal, potentially even on the Ancient lane.
Maybe with Disciple of Nevermore too.
Yeah, could be. So that's an interesting comparison to bring up. I actually want to mention the Disciple of Nevermore because they're actually very similar cards. The way Disciple of Nevermore is built, which, by the way, if you guys don't know, has this passive that gives other allies +2 attack and -2 armor, which is similar idea, basically, going wide and just giving attack at a downside. I think that the cards are actually pretty similar, with the Oath maybe winning out in that comparison, because Disciple of Nevermore also has such a strict downside that you don't really want to use it too proactively. It's kind of more of a finisher, but the Oath even has kind of more reach on top of that. I think it's a card that a lot of people haven't really been playing much in the beta so far, but I think we're sleeping on it to a degree.
Well, I think that with the Oath, there's any effect that generates multiple creatures or multiple creeps in a lane in one shot, you could very easily just suddenly be like, bam, Oath, and then you're just dead. In that lane, you take a something like really, really quickly. So, like, for instance, I'm thinking like either Hounds of War or Dimensional Portal are spells that can generate multiple units at once, and that if you are able to set up some sort of giant swing turn there to just kill a tower in basically one hit and set up for an ancient kill over a very short period of time, that's something that's actually quite attractive for something like this. Or if you're just all in face aggro and you just play this on turn one because you're that kind of maniac. I mean, I would love to be able to play against somebody who does that kind of thing. Just turn one, the Oath, throw it out there, see what happens. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, this card single-handedly makes it possible to literally win the game on turn 2, which is very disgusting.
Oh, really? You've seen some turn 2 kills with this card?
Yes, sir.
I know that Action Jackson was mentioning that he's had some turn 2 kills. I don't know if this card specifically was involved, but I hope that it was, because that's pretty sick. Okay, other cards that have been revealed that are interesting. I know that you guys aren't totally sure about which ones were revealed over the course of the last week, but if there are any of them that you know of that were revealed over the last week, I'd be very happy to chat about them. If they're ones that you liked. Altar of the Mad Moon. This was one that was revealed that didn't look very good to me. That gives +2 regeneration to melee creeps specifically. That seems really trash to me. It was actually funny because when this was revealed, Savage you tweeted back to it and said like, "Oh yeah, this card is surprisingly good," and I was like, wow, that seems wrong to me. I thought you were good at this game. But it turns out that he was actually just confused, and I was thinking of another card. Maybe it was Mayonnaise Favor or something like this. Because this card just looks god-awful.
Yeah. One of the cards of the ones that have been revealed I really like is Anguish Symptom. And
oh right, we forgot about that one. That's a great one to talk about.
I haven't played it that much myself. I've mostly experienced playing against it when Swim is playing it. So I realized from that how good it is.
So can you read it for us?
Okay, card. So Anguish Symptom at 4 mana is an improvement, and every single turn on the lane you put it in, including the turn you play it, you can fully restore your tower's mana.
This to me is like, as a Magic player, I see this card and I'm like, okay, there is some way to break this card in half. Like, there is something that I can do that's busted and silly and really, really powerful, because mana is the most important gate of what you can do in the game. So, and also, I mean, mana specifically in Magic, this kind of ability would allow you to untap all of your lands, and maybe there's some way to generate a profit off of doing that, and you're repeating the effect multiple times. So I don't know exactly how this will end up working out and exactly what application it'll have in Artifact, but especially even with in the blue decks that have Eclipse and Thunder God's Wrath and all of these expensive spells. Maybe you're not doing anything broken with it, but you just set it up so that when you get to your 6 and 7 mana turns, you can just be like, okay, double Thunder God's Wrath in a turn and team wipe your opponent and win the game from there.
Yeah, Thunder Gods is a really potent combo here. Yeah, honestly, I mean, this card is really good. I would say it's probably better than Satyr Magician, just because you can play it 1 turn earlier and therefore just like keep getting more mana earlier. And while it doesn't have the body to kind of provide you the board presence, it's also not killable because of that, except by improvement removal, which is rarer to find than creep removal. It's because of this card that I think that Satyr is, it looks better than it is, just because Sanctum is often going to be a better option, and it's pretty nuts. That being said, I'm not sure if it's something like a 3-of auto include. Depending on the deck, it might feel more like a 2-of, but either way, this is definitely a constructed level card.
Yeah, this is one that I can understand why playing it as a 3-of might be a little bit excessive, because it, like, once again, it's this idea of not affecting the board. If you have a hand that is all Aghanim's, Sanctums, and 7-drops, you just kind of can't affect the board in the early turns of the game, and as a result lose. So that is a potential problem with something like this, but definitely as a piece of the puzzle is really strong. There was another one that you were going to mention, Anger, that you said was interesting. What was that?
When did I say that? I don't remember. Did I say it now earlier?
Ogre Quirks Tosser?
Ogre Corpse Tosser. We haven't talked about that one. Can you read that one for us?
Okay, Ogre Quirks Tosser is a 5 mana 2/10 creep, and every time a melee creep on your side of the board dies while it's on the board on that lane, it deals 2 piercing damage to the enemy tower.
Am I right in saying that this is a really, really bad card? Because it seems terrible to me.
No, you're correct. This card is jank.
Yeah, I mean, it
do not play Ogre Corpse Tosser.
I mean, it seems like fun of playing a Prell X Ogre Corpse Tosser deck of just getting tons of them and spamming your opponent's tower with these pings, but like that doesn't sound good. That sounds silly. But so I'm not a big fan of this card in my first reading of it.
And nor should you be.
One card I still don't understand how it works is remote detonation. I've tried playing it, but it doesn't do anything. Nothing happens. I don't
Trying it
understand what
against
it
me.
does.
She didn't read the card right.
Oh, jeez.
I've tried using it in like 5 different situations. It doesn't
Okay.
do anything.
Okay, Anger. So remote detonation at 6 mana. This blue spell allows you to deal 5 damage to each enemy without a blocker. So basically, how this works is if the enemy is has no unit between them and your tower, this will damage them.
Oh.
So, quick rules question: does this mean, like, so for instance, if there's a creep or whatever diagonal to it that it's aiming to attack, does it receive the 5 damage? Because I am interested to know whether that blocking means that it has to be directly in front of it, or whether it's something that it's attacking.
It's the latter. It's something that it's attacking.
Oh, okay. So as long as if it is attacking something, it's not pointed at the tower, then it will be hit.
Yes.
Okay. An important little bit of terminology there. So this, though, does seem also like a janky card, because one of the problems with this to me is like comparing this to something like Annihilation is pretty embarrassing, because like when you're doing this, you at least have to have one unit in the lane, because you need to have a blue hero in the lane. So there's going to be most likely at least one unit that isn't hit by this. And you also need a situation where you don't have very many units in the lane, because the more units that you have in the lane, the fewer stuff that gets hit from your opponent's things. So it feels like you need to have basically the exact same situation that you would want to have for Annihilation, and it just does that exact same job, almost strictly worse.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, that's my reading of it. Okay, it checks out. It seems funny though.
And I think one of the card that we were mentioning before about wanting to talk about is Ravenous Mass. That might be the one Anger had in mind.
Wait, I can't remember saying I had one in mind. Have I been sleep talking? I don't remember.
Don't worry about it. Would you want to talk about Ravenous Mass though?
Oh, sure. It's definitely an interesting card to talk about. I mean, kind of like the last two. Like, maybe there's not much potential here, but you can imagine a lot you can do with this card. So what it does is at 4 mana, this creep with 1/1 stats will every turn, including the turn you play it, allow you to use its active, which condemns both of its allied neighbors, both units on either side on your side, and to buff itself by their attack and health permanently. This is a really interesting ability, because basically, you can use this in a lot of different ways, right? You can use it to kind of transfer temporary buffs into permanent buffs. Like, imagine you've got a Storm Spirit, you play a bunch of black cards, its attack goes really high, you eat it with Ravenous Mass, and then you've got that attack permanently, right? Alternatively, you can use it on allies that you kind of want to die. Maybe something comes back with something like Vesture, maybe Rix even.
Yeah.
I mean, the possibilities are limitless.
Yeah, the card that I was thinking about as a combination with this is actually a Rix, maybe with just like some random equipment on it, like even a short sword, and just like constantly feeding him to this card, because that would be hilarious. He just grows and grows and grows. Like his health, especially of this, would just grow out of control. I mean, you're feeding tons of gold to your opponent, and if they have something like a purge effect, you're totally boned. But it still would be sweet.
Absolutely. This is not something that I see as remotely competitive right off the bat, but honestly, it's extremely unique. Like Tyler State, it's something that, I mean, if it finds the right combo, this could easily make like combo style decks. Like, this is an incredibly unique effect, and there's like 3 or 4 different ways to actually use this for value.
That's one of the things that I'm noticing about the card file right now, in that there is a lot of cards that have these unique effects and going in different directions. I mean, obviously, I have to see the entire card file to see exactly how much these all pan out. But you see that you have this mana denial thing that's happening. There's this sacrifice little sub-theme in just this particular card. And I don't really... I understand that probably a lot of these are just kind of seeds and teasers for future stuff that'll come around. So while it might feel a little bit unsatisfying to have a card like this that doesn't necessarily pair with anything that is obvious. It would probably just be setting up for fun meme decks right now, but in the later on, there might be something like a sacrifice heavy combo deck or value deck that actually is a player in the metagame.
I agree.
Have the one thing that I think could be interesting to talk about is the different path of the banners things.
Oh, sure. Okay. Can you read those off for us?
Okay, so wait, hold on. So the black one is it costs 3 mana. It's an improvement, and it makes it so that after you play a black card in the lane you play it, you modify a random ally with +1 siege. And a lot of people make fun of these path of the banners for being trash, but I don't think this is the best one. But I think this one is kind of good. I know Swim disagrees. I think this one.
When she was saying 30 minutes ago she had a mono black deck, and I was challenging her because I really just want to smash it. This was in it, Neon.
Yep.
Path of the Cunning was in it.
Hey man, you see, you're not seeing the synergy here. It's because you play the 3 Path of the Cunning. The Path of the Cunning like triggers off of the Path of the Cunning. You see? You know?
Yes.
You play the first one,
and then your melee creep gets like 7 siege.
Yeah. You just so like the thing is what you do is in the first lane you play a Path of the Cunning on the third lane, and then in the second lane you play a Path of the Cunning on the third lane, and then in the third lane you play another Path of the Cunning, and now your melee creep eats your opponent's melee creep. That's game.
Basically. Okay, so the next one is the red one, Path of the Bold. All of them cost 3 mana and are improvements. So after you play a red card, modify a random ally with +1 attack. And I can agree that this one is trash. This one is terrible.
We're in agreement there.
Yep, I have no comment on that. Yes.
Okay, next, the blue one, Path of the Wise. After you play a blue card, deal 1 piercing damage to a random enemy. I'd say this is the second worst after the black one. I don't know about you.
I mean, it's hard for me to rate these because they all seem kind of equally mopey to me.
So there is actually one of them that I would consider playing, and it's the same one that Anger likes. Not the first one she mentioned, but the last one that she's about to mention.
Okay, so the last one is Path of the Dreamer. It's the green one. After you play a green card, give your tower +3 regeneration until the end of round. That's crazy. That's so good.
I can confirm this is actually decent. So Neon, let me walk you through a little. So you obviously have card game expertise, and you know one of the first things you learn in like Hearthstone and Magic is that
Life total doesn't matter. Yeah.
Life total doesn't matter, right? In Artifact, it kind of does, because it plays out like sort of a base race, right? Like there's some real inevitability towards the opponent damaging one of your towers, and wanting to keep it alive is actually a lot more important in a game like this than in those other games. So cards that have the ability to efficiently heal your tower, especially regen. Regen is basically more powerful than just healing, because obviously it won't allow your tower to be lethal if you have the regen over it. And if your tower is at full health but taking damage, the regen will basically keep it at full health. This card is actually constructed playable. I'm not sure if mono green is necessarily a powerful archetype right now, but it's not bad. And this card definitely might have a place in that deck.
See, my issue with a card like this is what I would want to be able to do with it is play this in the lane that I've kind of sacrificed, and then as I'm playing cards in other lanes, then it gains some regeneration in order to slow down the aggression of what my opponent is doing. Playing this in a lane that I am already kind of committed to and working on, I'm trying to hope that I'm not, like, my tower isn't dying in that lane. So I feel like it's not... I definitely have to play with this one in order to get a feel of actually how it works in the course of the game, because it's sort of awkward, and definitely also double spelling in a turn doesn't seem to happen very regularly. I mean, you can play 2 cards in a turn, but that usually involves an item. It's just that the nature of the game is that, like, as opposed to something like Magic the Gathering, if you're playing an aggro deck, you have a bunch of 1-drops so that you can go 1-drop, 1-drop, 1-drop on turn 2. And maybe 3 1-drops on turn 3 or like this. But because of the nature of artifacts, mana curve, and you start on 3 mana, it really rewards you of playing a curve of spells that just says, like, okay, I'm going to maximize my mana every turn by playing a card that costs whatever amount of mana that I have available. So all of that is to say that I guess I'm just not excited about a card like this. I mean, sure, I can understand that it would be okay, but this isn't the sort of card that I would be happy to have in my deck.
Okay, I could see that. I mean, it's kind of a bit of a meta call. It depends how the green slots ends up stabilizing. And I think mono... Oh, so I should actually clarify. My stance on mono is I think mono as a concept is going to get better over time as the card pool expands. I don't think mono is good in any color right now, but I don't know. I mean, Path of the Dreamer, quote me on this, 2 years from now, mono gets a bit better. Green is kind of one of the better colors for mono. Unlock some tools. This card could slide in as like a 1 over a 2 of fairly easily, I think.
So another card that I want to actually talk about that is really interesting is the Bolt of Damocles. This is one that was revealed shortly after, I think, our last cast, that it deals 20 damage to the enemy tower. And that's all that it does. It's a 10-cost blue spell that has just one job, and that's taking down towers. This is a card that I was actually discussing, I think it was with Simon, about how good this was. And I mean, I think that it makes sense as a finisher in a certain kind of blue deck, but because one of the problems with blue is they don't have a whole lot of tools to actually end the game. But at the same time, that's all that it does. You can't even, like, if this could hit a unit as well, I actually think would be interesting, because you could actually, like, it has 2 roles of either it's taking down an enemy tower or assassinating a hero. And like, while 10 mana to do that isn't great, it's not nothing. I don't know. I feel like this is too narrow as a card.
So this card should be bad. Your evaluation is basically correct. Like, this card is bad. I think that it is possible that as a meta call, this card could possibly actually end up being run. And what I mean by that is potentially you could see a meta, maybe not necessarily this meta, but you could see a meta devolve into constructed like control mirrors that are very vesture and attrition based. And in a meta that's very kind of insulated with those, you could actually see something like a 1 of Bolt of Damocles slide in as a finisher, just because there's not a lot of finishers that can punch through multiple vestures, and this does represent one of them in just a really, really slow format.
That's actually something that I think has been really interesting listening to you and some other people who are in the beta, is that Vesture is a card that I think we had identified as like, yeah, this looks good, but I mean, there's a lot of this equipment that looks good, but it's become pretty clear that it's kind of meta defining as this top end weapon, item.
I called it and nobody believed me.
Well, I remember specifically you and Simon going off, like, arguing back and forth, and he was more interested in the Wingfall Hammer, and you were saying no, Vesture is the truth.
Yeah, Thunder. No, what's it called? A Hornet
Wingfall
Alpha
Hammer?
is good. Wingfall Hammer is good. No, they're trash. Fucking Vesture of the Tyrant. That's what's lit.
Okay, so why is it so lit?
Well, the tower armor is just so good. And also, the thing is, okay, if somebody gives the tower 3 armor, right? Okay, so you annihilate it, you get it out of the way. Then boom, it has rapid deployment. It comes back the next fucking round. It's crazy.
Yeah, basically the conjunction of both of its effects make it very, very difficult for you to actually lose the game, because whatever tower you're defending will always have 3 armor, and this is very hard to punch through. Keep in mind, Siege is an additional damage source, so even like Time of Triumph, if they're being chump blocked, can't necessarily punch through this that easily, right? Multiple Vestures, the armor will stack, and these heroes will never be off the board for even a single turn, because they'll die and they'll be back on the board next turn to be back with that passive.
Yeah, and it's it definitely is a card that it's taken me a while to sort of realize how defining it can be, and especially something like the always having that deployment, always able to. And I'm just thinking about like any card that you have. It's like, okay, what if you put this on a red hero? It's like, well, you constantly have this giant threat that can deploy and say like, well, there's a lane that's kind of free, so he dies here and I redeploy it somewhere else. What if it's a blue hero? It's like, well, now I always have control over where I'm playing my blue spells. Black hero, same kind of thing of like always able to say like, okay, it dies here, I move it somewhere else, then I kill their opponent's hero, shut down that lane, and able to take down that tower. So just rapid deployment in and of itself is so powerful to actually have on a hero, especially when pairing it with the armor as well just makes it so hard to kill. So I think that's been one that I've learned a lot about that over the time that it's been really formative for me. But
that being said, I should point out with Vesture, it's not necessarily going to be like meta warping. It's just kind of the way that you will see a lot of control mirrors boil down to. Like it's the late game control option, and it's very possible that like early aggressive decks will be able to kind of punch through your defenses before you can set this up.
Well, actually, here's a really important question for me, because I'm trying to figure out still exactly how to build an item deck, because to me that's been a question of like, is it really important to have an equal mix of all the different types of items? How much do I want of the late game items versus the early game items? This has been, I haven't wrapped my head around that yet. So for instance, with Vesture, like let's say that we're playing a blue-black control deck. Are we playing 1, 2, or 3 Vestures in a deck like that, and why?
If it's blue-black control, I think you're going to be playing 3 Vestures, just because a lot of blue-black's win condition in the late game is that gold economy into the Vestures with like end 1 for me. Because if you get if you get 2 Vestures on the board, you're kind of not losing that game, right? Period.
Sure.
And maybe it'll go on for like 80 minutes, but you'll still win eventually. If it's blue in another color, I might put in 1 Vesture because I like the opportunity to have it off of and 1 for me, which I'll often be running. And it's not necessarily my entire win condition, but in the control matchup, if I'm like a blue-red or a blue-green, I still might enjoy the option. Overall, with the item deck, I think it's actually pretty linear and straightforward. Like most item decks are going to be built in a very similar way. Something like 2 Stonehall Cloaks being thrown in, something like 2 Blink Daggers being thrown in, a couple other items that I may or may not be able to mention. But basically, you'll see a lot of the same patterns across the board in constructed item decks, I would say.
And yeah, that's also something that I've been learning while playing a little bit of the TTS artifact that I did before, is that Blink Dagger is also particularly good, it seemed to me, in blue decks, because it also allows you to get more mileage out of your frail heroes and actually being able to play all of your spells, because just that flexibility of like, you have multiple heroes that die, you play one into the first lane, you play a spell, maybe you kill your opponent's hero, and then you play the Blink Dagger, move it over to another lane, and you're able to really maximize the mana usage and card economy over the course of a whole round where you might not have access to all of your heroes. Mm-hmm. What are some of the items that you've seen so far in the beta, Anger, that have impressed you the most, of those that have been revealed?
Out of the ones that...
Careful.
Yeah, no, be careful. I'll cut any of them if you happen to say one and you're like, oh, what about this one? I'll be like, nope, that one's out.
There's not really any of the ones that have been revealed that I have changed my mind on. Other than, okay, there's one thing, and that is that I don't value armor items as much anymore. Like in TTS, I would always have Stonehall Plate, but now I've realized it's not that good. And one reason is because if you have a Vesture of the Tyrant, that it goes in the armor slot, and I think that's part of what makes Vesture of the Tyrant also very good, because then you don't have to destroy other items for it. But I don't know.
Sure.
I just feel like health items are better than armor items, but that might just be my opinion.
No, that's pretty much true, and that's a lot of people's kind of experiences after playing for a while. Like Stonehall Plate is such a hard time to find place in a deck when you could just run Stonehall Cloak instead.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Stonehall Cloak has just a minute, like an immediate impact, and then it's gaining value over time as well. So it seems like it's a really hard one to like. the more that I've thought about that particular card, the more I'm like, yeah, I think this just goes in practically every deck. And it's great at allowing your blue heroes to survive a big hit. So you have them active longer and actually able to play out your spells. It's develops value over the game. Like the black heroes often don't have a lot of health either. So that's another big advantage. It just seems, I mean, maybe I guess in green decks you wouldn't want it as much because they already have a lot of health, and maybe you want to have that last slot as some sort of active ability item. I'm not sure, but definitely a card that has impressed me in my thinking about it so far.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty much a blue staple. To be honest, I think a lot of people are going to start off the beta overrating Stonehall Cloak. Honestly, when the beta launches, the community is going to kind of fall into the same pattern that a lot of us beta testers have fallen into. One of which being kind of overrating Stonehall Cloak early on. Don't get me wrong, it's a blue staple. It's very good, one of the best items in the game. But it's definitely not like a 3 of auto included in every deck. There's going to be a lot of decks that maybe have tankier heroes that don't need it. Even in something like a black-red gold combo deck, I think I would actually consider very much running Traveler's Cloak over Stonehall Cloak, which might seem like a very weird decision because for 2 extra gold, you get that just very, very powerful passive over time. But in a deck like that, you don't really value health as much as a resource, and 2 gold is actually pretty important. Like, you're effectively doubling the cost of Traveler's Cloak almost.
So with that, I think that covers a lot of the cards that I was the most excited and interested in talking about. Were there any more that stuck out to you guys that you thought is worth diving into before we head out for the day?
I think we covered the bases with me.
Wait, hold on. Okay, so when you were saying if I had one particular one I wanted to talk about, did you mean the one I got to reveal?
I was just specifically talking about that.
Is
I
that
mean, if you want to talk about that one, go ahead. I mean, people have probably seen the video. I'll link it in the description.
No, okay, no, I was just wondering, like, I just feel so dumb now. That was, like, what you were hinting at.
No, there wasn't something I had in mind, because I thought that you had said that you wanted another one to talk about, but because you started off as like, oh, Anguish Symptom, and we got to cut you off there, but I guess it's probably been covered. Don't worry about it. If you want to talk about that one, how about you go ahead and talk about your lore-heavy card that we learned about?
Yeah, there's not really much to say, but like I was just wondering, but like it's not that great in my opinion. I wouldn't put it in any constructed deck.
What does it do? What does it do? People don't maybe.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I always have to remind you about this. Like, read the card. Come on.
Okay. Hold on. I have to find it then.
You don't have it like memorized off the top of your head.
Only the lore.
I have cards memorized of like my preview cards that I've had for other games up to the top of my head that are like modal, multicolored, and this was months ago. I've seen very little competitive play. Know it off the top of my head. This was last week. Come on, Anger.
Yeah, I'm with Neon on this one, honestly.
Yeah. Sorry. I spent so much time on the lore, I didn't really pay attention to what it actually does. Okay,
yeah,
so...
Neon, she spent too much time actually playing the beta. She can't remember these cards she doesn't put in her deck.
Yeah.
Okay, but the reason why I don't remember it is because it's so bad. I haven't actually played it in a game. Okay, listen. Okay, so it's called Iron Branch Protection. It costs 2 mana. You can play it in any lane. It's a spell. And it gives any unit in any lane +3 armor until the end of its next combat phase. And it sounds a bit good, like when you first hear what it does, but it's a reactive play, you know? It's the only way it can be good, which Swim told me, is if the enemy has conflagration and your hero only has 2 HP left, so you know he's gonna be fucked for sure. Then you can use this so he won't die. But that's the only really situation where I see this being worth playing, but I don't know. No, I just feel like it's too weak in constructed.
See, what I'm hearing here is you're just trashing this card that Valve gave you to spoil. You know, they're just gonna say this like, you know, Anger doesn't appreciate it. Just never gets anything ever again. You're ruining your relationship. They crafted this card out of love and care, and you're just shitting on it.
Wait,
honestly, I kind of shit on my card too.
Give me a card. I will appreciate it. Crap this card in the game. I will sell it, you know, to the masses as if it is, you know, the return of Christ. It'll be great.
One very important aspect of this card, which I didn't cover in my video, is that Treant Protector, right? He has been around for a long time, and I think he might have invented the dab. If you look at him in the picture, in the artwork, he's dabbing.
Oh, let me check this out. Dabacat will be upset. Not.
The
Yeah,
Treant
and
dabber.
artifact did happen before Dota, so it actually could be true. This
Yeah.
could check out.
Maybe thousands of years ago, he'd be dabbing on people. So what's the name of the card again?
He's dabbing on Drow.
Oh yeah.
Dabbing on the hater.
Oh yeah. No, I see it. He's definitely throwing down the dabs. I love it. Yeah, the Drow just can't handle the swagger of Treant, I think is what the problem is here.
Yeah, she trying to kill him, so he just dabs on her.
I like it. Okay, so with that, be sure to check out other stuff that we're doing on the channel. What are you guys up to over the course of the next little while? I know that Swim, let's start over to you. You finished all of your reviews of the red, blue, black, and green cards, so I imagine you're probably going to go do some videos to kind of catch up on the stuff that was missed, correct?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got a Smash Anchor's mono black deck right after this, but yeah, no, after I'm done with that, I'll be doing all of the rest of the reviews. Honestly, I really regret not doing a separate ranking for Draft and Constructed, because it's just like it's so different in Artifacts, and it's so built around the idea of like that dual mode format.
What about you, Anger? Are you just too busy now playing the game to actually make any content for us?
Well,
Too big
okay,
She has been, actually, yeah.
No, but okay, so while playing, right, I've been thinking about what I'm gonna make, okay? So, and also, like, just playing the game, because now I can read the lore in the game. Up until after I released my video, I didn't read any of the artifact lore. So, but now I know everything. But that means I can't make artifact lore videos. So what I'm gonna make more Dota lore videos. So it's without spoiling anything, only saying what we know from Dota. And one really exciting thing that I'm like setting up, and it's taking a long fucking time, but I'm mapping the entire Dota world. So in all the different heroes and events and stuff, there's different places they are. Sometimes just a biome, like a forest or something. Sometimes it's a castle of a king or something. And I'm placing everything in a map. And then I'm going to, in videos, like cover, I'm going to call it Dota geography. And I'm going to cover like the story, the history, the culture, the biome, the characters and events and everything that's happening there.
One of the funny things is that I learned we don't have a name for the Dota place. Like there's no there's no title for it, which I find
Summoner's
Rift. Yeah, that's it. Azeroth. Yeah. No, nothing like that. Okay, but that will do it, I think, for today. Be sure to like and subscribe. Love to have that support. Thank you so much to the both of you to take your time out of, jamming those sweet, sweet games and hanging out with me today. It's been lovely.
That was so passive aggressive. Taking time out of just like jamming artifacts without neon.
Yeah, I mean, you do it. It must be nice to that you're such gracious individuals to take that few minutes out of your day and playing those sweet games to chat with little old me.
Neon, it's very nice.
It's very nice. Yeah, but it's been great though. I will chat with you all later, and thank you very much for joining.
Peace.
Thank you for your business.